Welcome back to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Joey Dwyer here after Vanderbilt's 64-62 loss at the hands of Grambling State, a quad 3 loss for Vanderbilt. The one thing Vanderbilt had on their resume heading into tonight was not a good win, but the lack of a bad loss. They no longer have that to hang their hat on anymore, and they also don't have a good win now. So Vanderbilt's resume is on thin ice. Vanderbilt had a chance to extend their winning streak to 3 games, and just when you thought they got something going, this happens and they lose all that momentum heading into a week-long break where they now have to think about it and can't kind of build on that momentum that they had. Things are certainly an uphill climb for Vanderbilt, but we knew that. Tonight just makes that even more of a point. They come off of a really nice win against a decent Pitt team and then do this. So Vanderbilt is not in a great spot resume-wise, and when you watch them play a game like tonight, you can kind of see why their resume looks the way it did. They turned it over too much. They shot it okay. They didn't shoot it well enough to overcome a lot of their things, a lot of their downfalls. They didn't have Jordan Wright, but that's not a great excuse for losing to a SWAC team who is a decent SWAC team, but they also didn't play all that well tonight. Vanderbilt really just didn't execute on either end very well. Offensively, turned it over way too many times. They turned it over 19 times. On the other end, probably had one of their worst defensive games of the year. They had a lot of guys get caught sleeping. A lot of guys got caught ball watching. They didn't turn Grambling State over as much as they would have liked to. That's their identity. You saw them make an effort to turn them over throughout the night, and it didn't work. Grambling State turned it over under 10 times. I don't have that number in front of me at the moment, but I think it was like 7 or 8 times. They gave up way too many open looks from beyond the arc, and that's something they struggled with all week. The Pitt game, too, is they didn't defend the three-point line very well. And tonight, I don't think Grambling State made them pay for it as much, but there was a lot of open looks there. Also gave up a ton of offensive rebounds. And a lot of the defensive issues stemmed from their offensive issues. There was a lot of points off turnovers, and Grambling State did not shoot it well enough to beat them if Vanderbilt had played an average offensive game. If Vanderbilt hadn't turned it over 19 times, say they turned it over 13 times, they probably win this game because Grambling State didn't shoot it well enough to win this one. Grambling State shot 39% from the field and 40% from three. That's probably not good enough to beat Vanderbilt if they're not turning it over as much. But Grambling State ended with 23 points off turnovers. Vanderbilt also gave them 34 points in the paint and 12 second chance points. So this was self-inflicted. Vanderbilt probably wouldn't have got outplayed by Grambling State if they hadn't made their own downfall. Grambling State did not play well enough in the half court to win this game. Their defense probably wasn't good enough to win it single-handedly for them, but Vanderbilt just made too many mistakes tonight and just kind of led to their own demise in this one. And it's kind of been the story of a lot of their losses this year, is not the other team getting super hot and them just not being able to compete, because that happens once in a while. Vanderbilt can lose to a mid-major once in a while just because of them getting hot despite the talent difference. But you think this is one they're going to win just because of their talent level, but the way they keep making mistakes continually and just shooting themselves in the foot is really frustrating. And a reason that they've lost games like this in the Southern Miss game is just the same issues. You think a veteran group wouldn't turn it over as much as this one does. You'd think that with the way they shot it tonight, they probably would have won this game 40% from the field and 37% from three. 9 for 24 from three is really what you like to see. Vanderbilt shot 27 free throws tonight, fouled a lot of Grambling State's best players out, and still couldn't find a way to win this one. Actually got beat by some of their bench guys late in the game, which was really discouraging. I'm sure that was salt on the wound for Jerry Stackhouse and his team, but man, what a brutal night for Vanderbilt. And some of their best players really didn't have it tonight. Ezra Manio in particular had 0 points, 1 assist, 4 turnovers, and Trey Thomas really replaced all his minutes throughout the night. Ezra had a negative 14 plus minus, and I don't really like to use that stat, but again, another one of those guys to where you think, yeah, maybe he's getting more comfortable. He kind of seems like he's getting in more of a rhythm here, and then has 4 points against Pitt, and then has that kind of stinker tonight. I still do think that he is making some strides, but tonight definitely took a step backwards. Tyron Lawrence had a quiet 15. Actually wasn't horrible tonight. 3 for 5 from the field. Only 2 turnovers, which I think is a really nice improvement area for him. He turned it over a lot last year, and haven't noticed him turning it over quite as much. I think he's really growing into one of their better players. Hit that big free throw, or hit both big free throws on Wednesday night. He's hit some big buckets late in games for them throughout the year, and I think Tyron Lawrence is certainly a bright spot. Another bright spot is Colin Smith, who probably had his best game in a Vanderbilt uniform tonight. I think it's a career high 13 points, shot 4 for 8 from the field, 2 for 5 from three, grabbed 8 rebounds. And I think that's the most underrated part of his game. And maybe the most underrated part of any Vanderbilt players game is Colin Smith. He really just is a great rebounder especially for his frame, just that length he has, and just really has a knack for going up and getting the ball as a freshman, especially on the offensive glass too. Only had 1 offensive rebound tonight, but I remember that was a putback. I think it was an and 1 too. Colin Smith was certainly a bright spot tonight. Had 3 turnovers early, but really started to take care of the ball late. And right when you thought Grambling State maybe was going to pull away by a few points here or there, Colin Smith seemed to hit a shot once in a while, along with Trey Thomas, who was okay tonight, didn't defend all that well. Had a crucial turnover late in the game, but is quietly playing decent basketball for Vanderbilt and really became their starting point guard throughout the night, just because of the rough night that Ezra had. I don't know if that's going to be the pattern moving forward. I think Ezra needs a big game coming up here, but Trey Thomas is certainly making his case to take Ezra's job, or at least play alongside him in the absence of Jordan Wright. And they really missed Jordan Wright tonight. They needed kind of that alpha offensively. Tyron Lawrence filled it a little bit. Colin Smith did a little bit to kind of negate the loss of Jordan Wright, but they need him, especially when Liam Robbins has the game he had tonight. Only made 2 field goals, had 12 points, but 8 of them were free throws. Turned it over too much for a big. Had 4 turnovers, 6 rebounds is all right, but Liam Robbins did not look comfortable tonight, looked a little bit overwhelmed, and kind of the story of the night for Vanderbilt. They just looked overwhelmed at times against a SWAC team, which shouldn't happen. And they also looked flat to an extent. Like they thought they were going to come into this game and maybe not walk through it, because I don't know if they are the type of team that can that has that expectation in games, but I think they thought this game would be a lot easier than it was, or at least it looked that way. And tonight was not a good night for Vanderbilt in any stretch of the imagination. They end with a quad 3 loss, and with more questions heading into the week-long break than they've had really all year. It seems like the turnovers were a huge issue defensively. They couldn't hang their hat on tonight because they didn't defend all that well. Man, it was just a brutal night for Vanderbilt, and I was going to take a sick day today. As you can probably hear, I'm sick. That's why I'm not at Memorial right now. But Vanderbilt makes me work on my sick days when they play like this. So rough night for Vanderbilt, and this is going to be a loss that hurts them moving forward, and one that hurts their resume immensely at the moment. They'll probably drop in the net. They moved up a lot after the Pitt win. Now you really don't have anything on your resume. You have no quad 1 or 2 wins unless Pitt's in there now. I'm pretty sure they aren't though. And man, just a brutal loss for Vanderbilt. Let me check on the Pitt thing. No quad 1 or quad 2 wins and a quad 3 loss. So Vanderbilt really has some uphill climbing to do here if they want to even be an NIT team. And for that to happen, they have to fix some quintessential parts of their team. They gotta stop turning it over at the level they have all year. They have to rebound a little bit better. And they just need more from their veterans. Tyron Lawrence had a really good night, at least statistically. They need more from Jordan Wright, even than they were getting before the injury. Liam Robbins, I think, even with tonight, you got to be happy with what you're getting from him. Quentin Malora-Brown hasn't given you a whole lot. Vanderbilt has a lot more questions than answers at this point in the season, and I think that's really concerning as they head into NC State on Saturday and then head into SEC play just a few weeks later. Got to have some things figured out by then. Otherwise, they're going to get eaten alive in SEC play if they play like they did tonight. Really, the last few mid-major games they've had outside of Morehead State are games that they really did not look impressive in, and that's definitely concerning as well. The Pitt game is definitely something to build on though, and Temple as well, but can't play like this consistently at the level they have, and man, just a brutal couple weeks for Vanderbilt's resume, especially since Temple and Pitt were not quad two games. I think they'd be in a much different spot if those games had kind of looked a little bit better in the net, but certainly have not. And Vanderbilt played into what Grambling State wanted them to do tonight. They wanted them to turn it over. They wanted to overwhelm them. Vanderbilt wanted to do the same thing to them, and Grambling State did not do that. They came out fearless, and you got to credit them for that. I think this game was more on Vanderbilt than it was Grambling State being awesome, but Grambling State has 2 Power 5 wins for a reason. They beat Colorado, who beat Tennessee, and then also beat Vanderbilt because of their fearlessness and because of all the athletes they have on the perimeter. They have some real talent too. So it's not the worst loss they could have had. I wouldn't say it's an Alabama A&M type loss like Lipscomb's hoping to avoid tonight, but it's certainly not one that looks good on the resume, and certainly one that could have been easily avoided. So really tough one for Vanderbilt. Looking forward to hearing what Stack has to say tonight. I wish I could be in there just to kind of get the gauge of what he wants to say and kind of how he views this loss. But this is a really tough one for Vanderbilt, and one they're going to have to bounce back from on Saturday against NC State. So I appreciate you guys watching. God bless, and peace.